This is the biggest threat to the US dollar, as national debt toll ticks higher and higher to the tune of a record-breaking $34 trillion. The future of the dollar seems more and more unsteady. The situation is beyond scary. It's quite frankly terrifying, with a staggering $1 trillion added to the national debt every 100 days. I know a lot of people feel complacent about this, but you really have to look at this trajectory from a historical perspective to understand why this level of growth is so destructive. Yes, national debt has existed since our country's inception, but it followed a somewhat slower path before. For example, the jump from 31 trillion to 32 trillion took about 8 months. 8 months. Now we're seeing $1 trillion every 100 days. This is a huge red flag. It's unsustainable, and this level of growth is only expected to continue, according to many economists. And even global bankers are starting to worry about what this means for the future of the US dollar and the US economy. Listen to what JP Morgan's CEO, Jamie Dimon, said about US debts and deficits.
America we spent a lot of money, and during COVID and after COVID, and our deficit's 6% now. That's a lot, but obviously that drives growth. So any country can borrow money and drive some growth, but it may not always lead to good growth. So I think America should be quite aware that we got to focus on our fiscal deficit issues a little bit more, and that is important for the world. So yeah, that did drive some of the growth.
Is that a big warning? Do you think there's a comeuppance to come in the next couple of years? Which
I don't think it's a big comeuppance. I don't think it's the next couple of years, but I think it's why we have higher inflation and sticky inflation. And I think, if you want to do a great job in your country and you have a 6% deficit and 100% debt to GDP, this can go on for a while, but the sooner we focus on it, the better. So I'm hoping that, the government really focuses on how can we reduce that deficit and still have good growth, but how can we reduce that deficit? At one point, it'll cause a problem, and why should you wait? Because the problem will be caused by the market. And then you'll be forced to deal with it, and probably in a far more uncomfortable way than if you dealt with it to start.
So what do you think? Should we heed his warning about unchecked deficit spending? This debt, which is just multiplying at an exponential rate, could very well lead to a crash of the US dollar. You see, previously the US would just pay off old debts, issuing new bonds and securities. But today, foreign investors are well aware of the debt problem that the US is facing, narrowing the market for US bonds and security. Listen to what Congressman Thomas Massie just had to say as he spoke to Tucker Carlson about the real threat to the US dollar. It's unmistakable.
At some point, they're going to quit using our dollars as reserve currency. I mean, I watched your interview with Putin, and one of the things, whether you hate him or not, one of the things he said that is true is when we sanctioned him, before we sanctioned Russia, 70% of their transactions were in US dollars. And after the sanctions, it's less than 20% of their transactions are in US dollars. So what we're doing with all these sanctions, ironically, we're shooting ourselves in the foot every time we sanction a country and say you can't use our currency to have a transaction. We're taking away our ability to charge them 3% for that transaction, because when we print 3% more dollars, we're just taking that money.
And we're also sending a really clear signal, which is the dollar's not safe for you.
Right.
It's the reserve currency because it's a safe haven, because it's a stable country. It's the most stable country in the world, and we're not going to weaponize the dollar because that would be shooting ourselves. But suddenly we are.
So we're shooting ourselves in the foot. When we sanction all of these countries, they're like, why are we going to use the US dollar? Why are we going to be bullied by this? It's being weaponized against these individuals. We don't want to use that. We'll use the BRICS currency. We'll get back to that video in a minute, but first, I need to tell you about a golden opportunity for investors that's happening right now. Mortgage rates have plummeted in anticipation of the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates at their upcoming meeting in September. Now, it's good news for buyers, and it has presented a unique overlap in the investing world right now. Remember, when mortgage rates spiked last year, well, a lot of sellers started offering incentives to help investors achieve positive cash flow. For example, my company, Morris Invest, and our team over at Sedera Wealth started offering clients a rate buy-down credit. Now, a rate buy-down drastically reduces your mortgage payment. If you've ever run the numbers on an investment property, you know that's a big deal. Now, here's where the golden opportunity comes in. When mortgage rates change, it can take a while for other things like seller incentives to start catching up. So even though you can get a mortgage rate in the low 6s right now, and that could be even lower by the time you're seeing this video, right now you can also lock in a rate buy-down credit on top of that. And this is huge, people, huge. With the two combined, our team's finance expert said he's seeing our clients locking in rates he hasn't seen in years. But here's the catch. The window of opportunity here is very narrow. This overlap will close very soon. So those seller incentives are going to fall off very, very soon. There are two more reasons to move quickly on this. One, prices are rising week over week. And now that rates are going down, they're going to spike even more dramatically, which will be made worse by two, increasing competition. Potential buyers have been sitting on the sidelines just waiting for rates to drop. And now that they have, they're going to flood the market, reproduce bidding wars, pushing prices even higher. If you need a refresher on the advantages of owning real estate, like how it delivers 4 streams of income through number 1, appreciation and equity gains, number 2, principal reduction by your tenants, number 3, tax benefits and depreciation, and number 4, cash flow, I'll link another video in the description so you can check that out. But if you've done your research and you already understand why build-to-rent properties in high-growth rental markets are a great path to financial freedom, then take action right now. You do not want to miss out on this opportunity to fast-track your investing strategy. Cash in on this narrow overlap of lower rates and seller incentives while it's here. Click the link below and schedule a free call right now. It could be the most important call you make this year. And when you look at the big picture, this huge amount of national debt right now in the United States is accruing more interest than ever. The U.S. is projected to spend about $870 billion on interest payments alone in 2024, which is more than we spent on the Department of Defense, if you can believe that, and our national security. Now, if you aren't super familiar with the inner workings of the U.S. national debt, I'd recommend that you click on this card right up here. I have another video where I discuss the history of the national debt, what it's comprised of, and how it's gotten so out of control in recent years. It's pretty eye-opening. You can bookmark it and watch it later if you want. Now, to most sound-minded individuals, it is clear that mounting debt at this level must be addressed. In fact, 3 out of 4 voters agree the national debt is an issue that should be a forefront of policymaking decisions in the United States, but it's not, as Congressman Massey just pointed out. There is an entire list of threats that are risking the future of the U.S. dollar, including rising economic threats from China, the war in Ukraine, the possibility of a departure from the dollar as the primary reserve currency of the world, and so much more. But national debt may be the biggest threat to the future of the US dollar, of all of them. No matter your political affiliation, now is the time to get informed about this issue and ensure that you have the means to protect yourself and your family. The national debt, like any excessive amount of bad debt, is looming over our heads like a dark cloud. And sadly, it doesn't look like there's a real sustainable way out of it. This enormous amount of debt poses a serious risk to our country's future and perhaps worst of all, sets the stage for de-dollarization. So in this next video, you're going to learn about the future of the digital dollar. This is information that everyone needs to know right now. Just click this video right here and I'll see you there.